There once was a time when God of War Ragnarok was expected to launch in 2021, but its release date was ultimately pushed back to an undetermined point in 2022. Hype is incredibly high for God of War Ragnarok, and this extra development time will no doubt result in a more polished and overall better experience for fans, though it's understandable that some are getting impatient to get their hands on the game. Sony hasn't provided any kind of release window for God of War Ragnarok, and has not narrowed down the game's release date beyond that it's expected to be coming at some point this year. However, a possible release date has since leaked online, as it appears as though the PlayStation database has potentially leaked the God of War Ragnarok release date. According to the leak, the God of War Ragnarok release date is September 30, 2022. It's possible that this is just a placeholder date, or is meant to mean that God of War Ragnarok is aiming for release sometime that quarter, but it's also possible that it's the real deal. It will likely be months before PlayStation fans find out if there's any truth to this leak, but if it is real, it would make a lot of sense. September 30th is a Friday and new video game releases typically come out on Tuesdays and Fridays, so the leaked release date satisfies that requirement. Not only that, but an early fall release date would make sense for God of War Ragnarok. Fall, actually September is the month where Ragnarok actually happened in real Norse history. God of War games always releases in certain time zones where they consider astrology and other correlative mythological and historical events, and it would put some distance between God of War Ragnarok and some of the other big PlayStation exclusives scheduled to release in 2022. The first major PS5 exclusive release is set to launch in February in the form of Horizon Forbidden West, and Sony isn't going to stop there. March will see the launch of Gran Turismo 7, and the Square Enix published Forspoken is set to drop in May as a timed PS5 exclusive. A holiday 2022 launch for God of War Ragnarok would make a lot of sense, but a newly discovered age classification out of Saudi Arabia could imply an earlier launch than expected. The official ratings board for Saudi Arabia, the General Commission for Audiovisual Media, appears to have rated God of War Ragnarok and assigned it an age classification of 18. The 18 rating is reserved for games suitable for adults ages 18 and above. This is especially notable because Saudi Arabia has a distinct rating for unreleased games, dubbed to be classified. In other words, Saudi Arabia has had access to enough of God of War Ragnarok to do a full rating of the game. Before anyone leaps to the assumption that God of War Ragnarok's development is finished or in a playable state, that's not how ratings traditionally work. Ratings boards do not typically play the games they rate. Even the ESRB only rarely playtests games post-launch to ensure publisher transparency about in-game content. Otherwise, ratings boards are entirely reliant on publishers providing a full accounting of content found pertinent to the game's rating, typically including both text descriptions and video evidence. The big question is what this means for God of War Ragnarok's release date. No one should expect God of War Ragnarok to launch this winter or spring due to Saudi Arabia's rating, of course. Not only is Horizon Forbidden West going to take priority for these seasons, but there's likely much left to do, including PlayStation's marketing lead-up. It could, however, mean a release date ahead of 2022's holiday season. While it's possibly just a placeholder date, in combination with the Saudi Arabian rating, a September release could make a lot of sense, as Ragnarok actually happened in that period of time. So, it makes perfect sense, and I can't wait, guys. God of War Ragnarok is my most anticipated. Moving forward, we have an update on another upcoming PS5 game, as Final Fantasy XVI is getting a big reveal in spring 2022, as producer Naoki Yoshida shares a message detailing troubles faced during development. Final Fantasy XVI was officially unveiled at Sony's PlayStation Showcase event in September 2020. Despite the lack of news, Square Enix had earlier mentioned that it will share noteworthy announcements regarding Final Fantasy XVI in 2021, but could not deliver on this promise. Some fans believed that Final Fantasy XVI would show up at the PlayStation Showcase or the October State of Play, but it was even absent from the Game Awards in December. Instead, Forspoken, another game published by Square Enix, was heavily featured at the Game Awards, resulting in many fans losing all hope of seeing Final Fantasy XVI this year. The FF16 development team has just shared a new message that details some of the troubles faced during development and promises to reveal more information in the new future. Naoki Yoshida, producer of Final Fantasy XVI, mentions that development was set back by almost half a year as a result of the ongoing pandemic. The developers had to work from home, which hampered communication with the Square Enix office in Tokyo and ultimately resulted in delays as well as cancellations of outsourced assets. Yoshida then confirms that the current plan is to host a big reveal in spring 2022 in order to build excitement in the lead-up to Final Fantasy XVI's release. He ends the message by apologizing for the delay and thanks fans for their continued patience. The message also states that the development team had spent much of 2021 dealing with issues that come with developing games from home. Now, the aim is to improve the overall graphical quality of Final Fantasy XVI, in addition to refining the combat mechanics as well as focusing on better optimization. It was earlier confirmed that the main story of Final Fantasy XVI has been completely written, and it seems like the game is in the final stages of the development cycle. While this does not guarantee that FF16 will launch next year, we can hope to get to our hands on the game in the second half of 2022. Naoki Yoshida also serves as the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. The recently released Endwalker expansion has been met with universal acclaim, and it seems like fans trust Yoshida and the entire team at Creative Business Unit 3 within Square Enix. As evident by the message shared today, Square Enix has gotten much better at communicating with the audience, and it looks like Final Fantasy XVI will be worth the long wait whenever it comes out. With the delay announcement for Final Fantasy XVI leaving a big gap in Square Enix's AAA release slate, Forspoken just became its biggest game of 2022.
I'll let you in on a secret, but I'm a pretty big deal.
Forspoken is the first original game from Luminous Productions, the developer of Final Fantasy XV, and some absolutely stunning tech demos courtesy of its Luminous engine. Needless to say, Forspoken is new territory for Square Enix. Forspoken definitely has an uphill battle of accomplishing all its lofty goals of being a successful new IP worldwide. Couple this with the fact that it is coming from Luminous, with its last project having more than its fair share of controversies given its long, tumultuous development and ultimately large amount of cancelled content, including 3 planned DLC episodes. It's understandable that Square Enix might not have initially planned to delay Final Fantasy XVI and hedge all of its bets on such an ambitious title. Forspoken follows a Isekai storyline, which anime fans will know from the likes of Sword Art Online and Konosuba as revolving around a person from the real world being trapped in either a fantasy or video game world. Many elements of the game are fascinating, such as its sprawling, gorgeous open world and addictive traversal system, something more open world games seem to be taking note of thanks to games like Marvel's Spider-Man. The game's combat also looks engaging, with its emphasis on ranged magic abilities over a traditional RPG battle system, or even an action-based one similar to Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. Forspoken looks like it could be a great start to a new franchise, but in the shadow of a titan like Final Fantasy XVI, it might have to be more than that to really earn its place in the upper echelon of Square Enix AAA titles. As alluded to earlier, however, it may not be the case that Forspoken will be Square Enix's only big game for 2022. While the studio is likely to go big on other titles like Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, Babylon's Fall and Star Ocean The Divine Force, Forspoken is clearly one of the most elaborate and expensive projects the studio has revealed for a while. Not having the comfort of knowing when to expect Final Fantasy XVI could hurt the game in the long run, as fans could compare it to some of Square Enix's bigger recent efforts like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hopefully that's not the case, because for now, Forspoken is looking to be one of the most interesting games of 2022, and I think it'll be a sleeper hit. When the PlayStation 5 was released in November 2020, it brought several improvements over the PlayStation 4. The console is capable of higher resolutions and frame rates, allowing for games to look and feel better than ever before. With Tempest 3D audio, soundscapes are made more immersive, letting gamers truly escape into a new world. Of course, the console's SSD cannot be forgotten either, as it decimates loading times and tears down previous level design limitations. The most notable addition the PS5 introduces is the DualSense controller. Although the DualShock range of controllers has served Sony well for many years, the DualSense takes things to a new level by incorporating features that excite the senses and add a new layer to games. Features such as advanced haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, and a built-in microphone can be used by developers to innovate the way games feel and respond to players. The haptic feedback system originally sold as one of the largest selling points for Sony's PS5 console, and its DualSense controllers that promise to give a unique experience compared to other peripherals. However, the impact of the haptic feedback in the DualSense is heavily dependent on whether or not a game developer designs any given title around this kinetic play experience. A recent patent from Sony might indicate that the hardware developer is looking to introduce a way for the DualSense controllers to personalize haptic feedback for players beyond the input of game developers. This could make smaller indie titles, and the massive library of backwards-compatible PS4 titles more interactive on PS5 compared to playing across other systems. The patent itself looks specifically at finding interactive tasks within a game, and creating a haptic response based on what is happening and what the player is supposed to do. This new system will also determine the type of feedback based on information within the player profile, which could be something as simple as a player's PS5 settings for haptic feedback, or as complex as their previous playing experiences. It also appears that the primary purpose of this software is to lead players towards interactive tasks or through sections of games through the haptic feedback. If this system is able to procedurally build haptic responses based on both player gameplay and what is coming up in a game, then this could work towards improving the experience of all games on the PS5. The improvements could also go towards PS4 games that are backwards compatible on Sony's new console, such as those available through the PS Plus collection and included monthly titles. It isn't clear if this software might be able to transfer with the DualSense to PC games played with the controller, but it does look like it could have a larger impact on older titles, cross-system releases, and indie games without included haptic feedback. Considering the filing date of this patent, this system likely won't be available in the next PS5 update, but it could still be coming in an update further into the future. Regardless, the implications of procedurally creating haptic responses could be huge for making one of the biggest selling points for the PS5 extend to even more titles. If the backwards compatible library of PS4 games can be retroactively given haptic feedback, then Sony could have tons of titles that best utilize the DualSense's biggest feature. This new enhancement looked to provide a more immersive experience for fans. Unfortunately, gamers never had the opportunity to test out the full capabilities of this feature of the next-gen controller until now. Recently, a new app was released that looks to give PS5 fans more control over the settings of their DualSense controllers. Known as the PS5 Controller Trigger Test, fans can use the app to access several cool features relating to the adaptive triggers. Among the many options, players can test out vibration, feedback, and weapon feedback. These features get in-depth as they allow players to adjust settings, such as start position and amplitude. In addition to these features, the UI of the app lets users check battery life and change the light color on the controller. According to the creator of the app, Rehab Mehboob, the motivation to develop the app came from a lack of games using the adaptive triggers feature. Furthermore, they noted that even the titles that utilized the option failed to give players the chance to customize the settings. As a result, the developer wanted to make an application that would let players experiment with the different effects of the adaptive triggers technology. In order to make use of the app, gamers must connect the PS5 DualSense controller to their mobile device. In addition, it is worth noting that this new app is not free. However, the barrier to entry is relatively low as it only costs $1.99 to download. Currently, the app is available on the App Store for iPhone and iPads using iOS/iPad OS 14.5 or later. In addition, it has Mac support, but the system must include Apple's proprietary M1 chip. Unfortunately, the app is not available on Android devices, but the developer stated they could bring it to the platform in the future. It's exciting to see developers come up with unique ways to enjoy the new features of the DualSense controller. With this new PS5 controller trigger test available for consumers to test out, it will be interesting to see if PlayStation develops its own app for the controller in the future. One of the best PS5 games available is one that every PS5 owner has right out of the box, Astro's Playroom. The game features Astrobot, a cute robot with some cool dance moves. Astrobot takes an adventure through 4 worlds themed after the internal components of the PS5. It is an absolute must-play, and it offers a nostalgic trip down PlayStation's long and illustrious history. The game has a catchy soundtrack and visuals that are an explosion of color. However, the best part of the game is how it makes full use of all the DualSense controller's unique features. This is to be expected, as the game does, in part, serve to introduce new PS5 owners to the DualSense. However, it does so by taking players through an addictive platformer that is fun yet still accessible for even the most novice gamers. The first DualSense feature players will likely feel is the haptic feedback. As Astrobot ventures over different terrain, the controller will use haptic feedback to produce a similar tactile sensation for players. In Cooling Springs, for example, Astrobot finds itself on a sunny beach, and with each step that the robot takes on the golden sands, the roughness can be felt in the hands of players. Haptic feedback produces an entirely different sensation when Astrobot must wade through viscous sludge in memory meadows. Weather effects are also effectively simulated, and the pitter-patter of rain on Astrobot's umbrella can be heard, seen, and felt. Little Astrobot has access to a bow and arrow that it can use to shoot at its opponents. When players use the adaptive triggers to pull the bowstring back, the tension of the string is felt in the triggers. Astrobot can also wield a nifty machine gun device that shoots balls, and with each projectile fired, the adaptive triggers give feedback to players. Although subtle, the use of the adaptive triggers here demonstrates how they can be used to help players feel the actions they are performing on screen. Features that have carried over from the DualShock 4 such as the touchpad, motion sensing, and gyroscopic aim also show up in Astro's Playroom. Scaling a mountainside in a monkey costume is done using motion controls which, although it can hurt one's wrist when done too much, is a bunch of fun. The touchpad is used ingeniously when Astrobot turns into a ball and players must use the touchpad to help the cute robot navigate. Gyroscopic aiming is a criminally underused feature in most games, but fortunately, Astro's Playroom makes use of it when Astrobot is carrying a bow and arrow. Although Astro's Playroom gives a sterling example of how the DualSense controller can be used to enhance gameplay and increase immersion, there has yet to be any other game that makes use of the controller nearly as effectively. Control, developed by Remedy Entertainment, suffers from this issue. The game makes use of the DualSense adaptive triggers, and each form Jesse's service weapon takes will feel different when fired. However, its implementation is weak, and if one is not paying attention, it is easy to forget that the adaptive triggers are being used at all. Similar issues affect A Plague Tale: Innocence, which is a PS4 game that received a free PS5 upgrade. The implementation of haptic feedback is impressively done, and the tickling feeling of crawling through grass can be felt in one's hands. Furthermore, the adaptive triggers are used quite creatively, and Amisha's footsteps can be felt when R2 is pressed down to make her run. However, the inclusion of gyroscopic aiming would have helped greatly. A Plague Tale: Innocence is not alone with this issue, and several games on PS5, for some odd reason, neglect gyroscopic aiming even though it makes aiming so much smoother when using a controller. The same problem is found with the director's cut games that were released in 2021. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, for example, implements most DualSense features satisfyingly. Haptic feedback highlights the impact of every sword strike, and the adaptive triggers can be felt when Gene pulls back on his bow. Unfortunately, once again, gyroscopic aiming is conspicuously absent. Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding director's cut does feature some of the best DualSense use currently available. Haptic feedback effectively emulates the feeling of rough grass when Sam is creeping, and the adaptive triggers will give greater resistance depending on how much cargo Sam is handling. However, once again, gyroscopic aiming is missing, which is a pity considering the wide range of new weapons that are introduced with the director's cut. The haptics can be felt though the raindrops and particle effects on Returnal and Ratchet, and also the gunplay. A strong lineup of games awaits the PS5 in 2022. This includes God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, GT7, Elden Ring, and the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. These games have the opportunity to succeed where many other games have failed. Hopefully, as developers grow more familiar with the PS5 and the DualSense controller, Astro's Playroom will become a roadmap for future games rather than a bar set too high for others to reach. Hideo Kojima's work is a matter of constant rumor and speculation. Not only has Kojima Productions proven its drive to innovate with the release of Death Stranding, but Kojima's departing endeavor at Konami revolved around a now-cancelled Silent Hill project. Fans can't help but talk about the possibilities of what Kojima might do next. Leave it to Kojima to start a new wave of speculation, sharing in a recent interview that Kojima Productions is working on not just one, but two current projects. Speaking with Japanese magazine Famitsu, Kojima talked about what he's working on going into 2022. To the surprise of everyone, Kojima was quite forthwith. He explained that Kojima Productions is currently working on two projects. The first he described as a big title, and the second he described as a new, challenging game. Unfortunately, that's the full extent of Kojima's descriptions for each project. The rest remains a matter of speculation. Unfortunately, the vagueness of Kojima's descriptions leaves much to the imagination. However, there may be something to read into a comparison of the two descriptions. Kojima says one of the projects is a new, challenging project. This could imply it's not a sequel or a major partner project, but rather something akin to Death Stranding, a new IP with experimental gameplay. In contrast, that could imply Kojima's big project is the opposite. It could be a sequel to Death Stranding, or it could be a major IP from a partner. There are, of course, rumors regarding all of these projects and more spread out online. Death Stranding star Norman Reedus has talked about a sequel currently being in negotiations. Insiders have talked about Kojima making a Silent Hill game in partnership with both PlayStation and Konami for well over a year. What appears to be the most likely combination of rumors would be that Kojima Productions is working on a big Silent Hill game with PlayStation and Konami, as well as a new, challenging game. Over his 35 years at Konami, and heading his own development studio, Kojima Productions, Hideo Kojima has established himself as one of the most iconic names in the video games industry. Between his 2.5 years directing the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and his own studio's Death Stranding, Kojima has become a household name in gaming. The legendary director is also very active on social media, and recent holiday wishes from the Kojima Productions founder have fans wondering if he may have dropped hints at the developer's next big project. The tweet posted Thursday by Kojima seems to be a rather innocent season's greetings at first glance, as the developer wishes his followers a happy holidays. However, the part that has many speculating comes with the image accompanying the post. The artwork, drawn by Metal Gear character designer Yoji Shinkawa, features 3 characters who have never been featured in any Kojima Productions game, possibly hinting at a future game the company could currently be developing. Shinkawa most recently worked with Kojima as the art director for Death Stranding. A new game from Kojima Productions would be the studio's first game since Death Stranding released in 2019, and the second original game from the studio as an independent developer. Kojima Productions also released a director's cut version of Death Stranding in September, adding new content, visual upgrades, and new gameplay elements. Rumors regarding Hideo Kojima's next big project are nothing new for the iconic director. Rumors constantly float around about Kojima's involvement in projects like Death Stranding 2, Silent Hill, and the Metal Gear franchise, to name a few. While many such rumors persist around the future of Kojima Productions and its next major game, the company has been building its repertoire in multiple fields, with the developer recently establishing a TV and music division. Kojima Productions has quickly become a staple of the industry, and with Hideo Kojima at the helm, their next project will surely excite and amaze fans. Now, speaking of Silent Hill, Metal Gear and Kojima, after months of silence, Blue Box Game Studios finally offers an update on the development of Abandoned, and when fans can expect to see more. Posted to the official Blue Box Game Studios website, an update on Abandoned comes in the form of a blog post titled Dev Blog Number 1 and the start of a new year, which details some of the events that took place behind the scenes at the studio. According to the post, Abandoned has been in development since 2017, but it only became the studio's main focus earlier this year after the game was officially announced. In terms of an update for when fans can expect to hear more about the mysterious title, the post doesn't offer much that hasn't been stated before on the website's FAQ page. Abandoned's playable prologue has been delayed out of 2021 and into Q1 2022, with the game reveal being around the corner. The post also mentions a playable tech demo that will be launching on the Real-Time Experience app in 2022 as well, that's meant to showcase the technology behind the game. However, Blue Box doesn't clarify if that's going to be the same as the prologue or if it will be a different release altogether. The rest of the post takes a more reflective approach, looking at the studio's year and how it handled some of the events that thrust it into the spotlight. Blue Box seems to be taking some responsibility for the confusion, saying that the studio doesn't want to make the same mistakes again, and that the Real-Time Experience app was released too soon due to the pressure that the studio felt from the public. Following the disappointing launch of the app, Blue Box was the target of harassment and death threats, which forced the studio to issue a statement asking for compassion and for the harassment to stop. It's unfortunate that the studio received such treatment, but hopefully following the statement such horrific behavior has ended. Blue Box doesn't mention anything about that in the post, which given its numbered title seems to be the first of several updates to come, so hopefully, things have calmed down on that front. And I hope it turns out to be what I expected it to be. Speaking of new projects, after over 5 years, since the long-anticipated release of The Last Guardian, it appears that genDESIGN is preparing to announce its next big game. One of the biggest stories in the last decade of gaming is the development and ultimate completion of The Last Guardian, a game that defied all odds by escaping development hell and finally releasing in December 2016. While the game mostly received praise and, like director Fumito Ueda's other games, has amassed a major cult following over the year, developer genDESIGN went quiet once again after its release to work on its next project. After over 5 years since the release of The Last Guardian, a New Year's tease by director Fumito Ueda hints that the team is preparing to announce its next game. Development studio genDESIGN was founded in 2014 by director Fumito Ueda during the long development of The Last Guardian, which is composed of many of the staff that worked at Japan Studios Team ICO during the development of ICO and Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 2. After 2 years, the developer was able to complete the ex-PlayStation 3 title, releasing it on PS4 in December 2016. After this, it appears that the company cut its ties with Sony. The last fans heard of genDESIGN was in March 2020, where it was revealed that the studio, along with Control developer Remedy Entertainment and Inside developer Playdead, had signed a deal with Epic Games to publish its next game as a multi-platform title, with the two companies splitting the profits from the game in half. A surprisingly hefty cut for genDESIGN given Epic's power in the modern games industry. At the end of 2020, the developer released a holiday greetings card which featured characters from ICO, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian, but also hinted at the studio's next game. On New Year's Eve, the genDESIGN Twitter account released a post seemingly written by Ueda himself which states Happy New Year. In 2022, I will do my best to make some new announcements while also linking to job listings at genDESIGN and featuring art of a tiger to commemorate the new year. While it would be easy to assume that this is instant confirmation that a new game from genDESIGN will be announced this year, it might also be careful to take it with a pinch of salt given how long The Last Guardian took to release. What is known about the project is that it might some way reference Beauty and the Beast. It will be the studio's first multi-platform title, meaning it's likely to release on Nintendo and Xbox platforms as well as PlayStation. There's little doubt many are excited to see what the PS Plus free games for January 2022 are. After all, some may think this selection may influence or set the tone for the service all year. With how PS Plus typically swaps up its patterns, though, this is unlikely even in a speculative sense. One thing that hasn't changed from the past few months, though, is the leaks. For the past 6 to 7 months now, the PS Plus free games have leaked online ahead of their official reveal. These have turned out to be reliable to an incredibly high degree every time. As such, the same source already leaked the PS Plus free games for January 2022. Leaked accurately, Sony confirmed that the 3 free PS Plus games for next month are Deep Rock Galactic, PS4 and PS5, Persona 5 Strikers PS4, and Dirt 5, PS4 and PS5. The first is a class-based 4-player co-op shooter where players take on alien hordes in procedurally generated caves. Persona 5 Strikers operates as a semi-sequel to the base game, but takes on a unique hybrid of tactical and music-game combat. Finally, Dirt 5 is a racing simcade game and the last one before Codemasters' acquisition. The jury is still out on how these games will be received, but there is a nice bit of variety here: co-op shooter, music JRPG, and racing. The safest play with PS Plus every month is variety, as it more likely means there's a little something for everyone. And for anyone interested in these games, they'll be available on January 4, 2022. Until then, subscribers still have time to claim the current selection of free games if they haven't already. Deep Rock Galactic has been available on PC and Xbox for some time, with the co-op shooter/mining game earning acclaim from fans and critics alike. Soon PlayStation gamers will get to see what all the fuss is about, as Deep Rock Galactic finally arrives on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on Tuesday, June 4th. Better yet, Deep Rock Galactic is one of the free PS Plus games for January 2022, so PlayStation Plus subscribers will be able to play it at no extra charge. While PS Plus sometimes only makes one version of a game available, Deep Rock Galactic will be available to claim for both PS4 and PS5 users. However, the PlayStation 5 version of Deep Rock Galactic will have some extra features that should definitely make it the definitive choice over its last-gen counterpart. While gameplay-wise the games will be near identical, the PS5 version of Deep Rock Galactic will offer some exclusive features through the use of the DualSense controller. When playing Deep Rock Galactic on PS5, gamers will have the option to use the DualSense controller's touchpad to control the terrain scanner tool, and the speakers will be used to get orders from mission control. While these PS5 exclusive features aren't earth-shaking by any means, they still help give Deep Rock Galactic on PS5 a leg up over other versions of the game. After all, Deep Rock Galactic on PS5 has the same content as the other versions of the game plus the extra DualSense functionality as icing on the cake. Deep Rock Galactic's PS5 features should make it more immersive than other versions of the game, and it seems like this will be a common theme for multi-platform titles this generation. The PS5 versions of games will have extra bells and whistles thanks to the DualSense controller, while those on other platforms will be missing out. However, it's possible Xbox fans may one day have a DualSense controller equivalent. In the meantime, multi-platform games like Deep Rock Galactic will likely continue to offer some extra features on PS5 through the DualSense controller, so those with multiple consoles will want to take that into consideration when deciding which platform they should buy a game for. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV, it's goodbye.
There's the bridge.